The Home Depot's making it easy to turn your favorite moment into the perfect color for any room with the Project Color app. Upload any image, then discover the colors and paint to match. Now you're a swipe and a click closer to everything you need for your next project. Explore the most popular colors and trending palettes to find your perfect paint. Get a colorful new experience with the Project Color app, then shop our best brands with gallons starting from just $25.97 at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only. See store for details.
Prepare for glory!
I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter and FullTimeFantasy.com, where you can find great podcasts like Jim Day of FF Champs, Adam Rodas and Dr. Roto of SiriusXM Radio, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Anthony Servino of FF Faceoff, and many others, again, including Dennis and myself. Again, we are just super proud to be a part of this network. Great group of guys and a great opportunity for us, and just a ton of great content and podcasts, so be sure to check them out. We've got a interesting little episode for you guys today. We're jumping back into the camp battles. We will be doing the NFC South today. So me and Dennis will continue that, knock that out as we have camp starting back up in about 8 days, I believe it is. So a little over a week, we will have our first NFL camp, so we want to knock these last few camp battles out before all of that happens. And, of course, I mean, we can't do this, or I can't do this without Dennis, as he is here with me. So, Dennis, what is going on? How was your weekend?
I had a great weekend. It was hot as hell in Gettysburg, but other than that, it was pretty wonderful. Had some good times with the kids, got to see some Civil War reenactment, and listen to Lincoln give his Gettysburg address.
That's pretty cool. Did you guys get to see fireworks or anything while you guys did all that?
We did. They had fireworks at the local college there, Gettysburg College.
Uh-huh.
So we left Thursday morning and got in about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, had a little dinner, went and saw some fireworks, so it was pretty sweet.
Very nice. I unfortunately did not get to see any fireworks this weekend, but that's not really that big a deal for me, and my kids don't know the difference at the moment, so I'm okay with that right now. Before we jump into the camp battles, as I was just mentioning a minute ago, a couple housekeeping things here, so we will announce. For those of you who are in the Listener League, for those of you who aren't, this may not be that big of an issue for you, but we will do our live, what's the word I'm looking for? Reveal. We will reveal our draft order live here at the end of the episode, and we also want to shout out that, again, we talked about it a little bit at the end of the last episode, but just talk about it a little bit more. We will be live, the Fantasy Football Roundtable, from Radio Row at the FFWC on September 6th and 7th from the Palms Resort in Vegas for the Fantasy Football World Championships, which goes through the September 5th through the 8th. So that opening Thursday of the NFL season through that Sunday, there'll be all kinds of drafts and everything going on there. You guys can come out and see us if you'll be in Vegas. I know some of that stuff will be live on SiriusXM Radio. You can listen to that. Maybe you'll catch me and Dennis on there. We'll see what happens. A lot of those people will be there. I know I listen to that stuff every year when that stuff's on there, and then obviously we will be there as well, recording live from Radio Row. Can't wait to do that. Should be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to push my way onto Sirius. I'll see if I can track down Bob Harris or any of those guys there. Oh, shoot, I can't remember who I listened to in the morning on the way to work now. It's escaping me. Adam Kaplan.
Adam Kaplan. Old Adam Kaplan. What's John Hansen, right?
John Hansen, that's the guy. Dang it.
Yeah.
Man, it sucks getting old.
Oh, I hear you. I listen to John Hansen as well. I like him. I don't know if he'll be there, but I would love to see if they were. I've listened to John Hansen for quite a couple of years now. I like Mr. Hansen. All right.
And the opening party there on the first night, Thursday, that's supposed to be a great big ball of fun. So,
I imagine it will be for you. I will not be able to attend that, but I know you're trying to. Are you for sure going to be out there for that?
It's right now. It's close. The plan is yes.
Gotcha.
The plan is yes. So we'll see.
If you make it out there, you're gonna have to live stream some stuff from Twitter. That's the other thing we talked about. I'm gonna attempt to do that. Everybody, we'll see what happens. But I do. I would also like to do a couple live things with me and Dennis while we're there. So if you guys have questions or want to see different stuff, I'm going to attempt to do some live streaming stuff from my phone on Twitter. We might even live stream half the episode from my laptop as we're recording and just kind of show you guys different stuff. It's going to be quite an experience for us, and we want to kind of bring, in a way, you guys along with us. So, that party, it sounds like it's going to be amazing. I wish I could, but my problem is if I were to try and call in sick to fly out there, I've got a lot of loudmouths that I work with, and then someone would say something to my boss's boss, and then it would just be all kinds of hell for me. So I will not.
Yeah, you'll probably run into your boss out there is probably what would happen.
Yeah, that would probably be just my luck, which maybe wouldn't be such a bad thing because he wouldn't be able to get off either, so then maybe it would be kind of like one of those, hey, let's just, neither one of us saw each other, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of thing. But I doubt that's the way that it would go down for me. So I will not be able to be there, but I think it's going to be awesome. I think the whole weekend's going to be awesome. So I'm right there with you. I'm super excited for that to get here and see how all that goes down. All right, so we're starting again. I mentioned the intro. I already brought it up again, but we're doing camp battles. We want to try and finish this out as I mentioned the first training camp opens up, and I believe it's 8 days from now. So we're getting close to the start of camps and everything like this. So we want to finish out this camp battle series so you guys kind of know what to look for everything going on in camp leading up to the preseason games. And we're going to do the NFC South today. Obviously, with the Saints, there is no battle at quarterback. We know Drew Brees is the quarterback for now. Actually, they put it in the notes here, but just have a quick question for you on that before we move on. Do you think Taysom Hill is the answer in the future for New Orleans, or do you think that is yet to be addressed?
I do not think Taysom Hill is the answer in the future. I think Taysom Hill will continue to be a gadget guy. I'd like to think Teddy is the answer, but I don't know how much longer Teddy wants to hang around if Breeze doesn't retire. But Taysom, I don't think so. Though, given the advent of the the recent reincarnation of the running quarterback, who knows? Maybe Hill is the answer.
Yeah, I was just curious because we haven't seen him throw the ball much, and I would imagine he can't be worse than Lamar Jackson. So I was just curious in your thoughts there. Like I agree, I think Teddy would be. But then that is the big question, is how much longer is he willing to sit there behind Drew Brees, even if he was promised the keys to the kingdom, so to say, after Drew Brees leaves. If Drew Brees decides he wants to play for 3, 4, 5 more years, is Teddy willing to sit that long? So at the running back position, I don't want to say there's necessarily a battle here. We know Alvin Kamara is going to be the guy and have some kind of split with Latavius Murray. It's interesting. So my opinion on this, I don't think Latavius Murray is quite as worth what a lot of other people do with the way that he is being drafted. A lot of people, I think he's going to be Mark Ingram. I don't see him getting that kind of workload, but I also don't see Alvin Kamara getting quite the workload that others think. I don't think he's just going to be the guy and be handed the ball 20, 30 times a game. I just don't see that happening. But the real battle there is with I'm horrible with saying this kid's name too. Is it Ozigbo?
Ozigbo.
Ozigbo. Okay, so Devine Ozigbo and Javorius Allen. They're both going to be kind of those guys who come in and spell Kamara at times. Both can catch the ball. Both are, Devine is a decent runner. Allen, I would say, is more of just a receiving back. So do you see either one of those guys getting any kind of run behind Kamara and Murray, or do you think it's just going to be the Kamara-Murray show unless one, I'm assuming one of them, they don't get hurt?
Yeah, I would expect that Ozigbo and Allen only see the field in mop-up and injury scenarios. Murray he's a solid back. He's got the build to handle that inside running. I don't think he has terrific vision. He does run awful upright, but he's got really good speed. If he can get through the hole, he can take it all the way. Kamara, I think they showed last year that for a short stretch, they're willing to let him carry the load, but they know that in order for him to be at his best, that they need to get him in space, and the best way to get him in space is to throw him passes. So Kamara strikes me as a 200-ish carry guy, 200 carries, 85, 90, maybe even 100 targets. So that's a heavy workload. Murray, I could see him getting 150 carries maybe. And then Allen is, yes, he's a real good pass protector, and he catches just about everything thrown at him, but he isn't going to get you anything after he catches it.
Yeah.
He's just that career jag. Ozigbo is somebody I could see Ozigbo flashing enough that depending on, I don't have Murray's contract situation in front of me, but if Ozigbo shows anything this year, I could see him pushing Murray out the door. Ozigbo would be cheaper. It would depend on what the Murray contract hit is next year.
So Murray's contract for the next 3 years is right under $3 million a year. So it's actually only a base salary of $1 million this year, and then in 2020 it's $2.8 million, and then 2021 $295, and then $295, and then unrestricted free agent 2023.
But what is his cap hit and dead cap if they cut him? Are you looking at Spot Track?
Yeah. So his cap hit would be 17, $1,700,000 in 2021, $5 million though in 2020 if they were to cut him next year, and then only $850,000 in 2022.
So if they have to cut him after this year, they end up with a big cap hit?
No, they would have to wait until after 2020. I mean, it depends on do you think $4 million is a big cap hit? I mean, I wouldn't want to cut him and take a $5 million cap hit, but that's not that bad. If they cut him after this year, it's $7 million, and then after next year is $5 million, and then after that it falls off a cliff. It's $1 million pretty much, $1 million and $850,000. So you're looking at, if they were to cut him, I would assume it would be in the 2021 season, because that's when the cap hit falls off.
Yeah, I could see, But again, it comes down to what do they, how do they, yeah, boy, that's a pretty good big cap hit for a backup running back, I guess, as I sit here and look at it, over $5 million.
Yeah, that's why I would assume that they wouldn't, but then again, this also goes back to something we talked about with, who was it? It was a wide receiver, Paul Richardson in Washington, because we were kind of talking about all the guys there. If Ozigbo is better, he's going to get on the field. They'll just figure out a way to leave Murray on the bench, even though they have to pay him for the next couple of years. And maybe they will just cut him, because as we both agree, I believe in talent overrules the money that they're paying you. So I agree with everything you're saying. I would just imagine, and it wouldn't hurt, I would think, to keep Latavius Murray also, just because of the volatility at the running back position as well. You've got a guy who's proven it in case like Zigbo or why did I just forget his name? Alvin Kamara get hurt. You have a guy like Latavius Murray who can step right in at least for the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's it makes you want to have depth.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not an overwhelmingly high cap number, so makes sense to keeping. Kind of, it's a bummer for Ozigbo, but I guess if Ozigbo's better, they'll play him.
Agreed. So the wide receiver position for the Saints is extremely interesting, because really outside of Michael Thomas, I don't think any of these guys are getting a lot of talk. I could be wrong on that. I do know that there are some Traquan Smith believers, especially after he showed out in 2 games last year. So there are a lot of people that believe that he could be the answer there, but obviously we know Michael Thomas, he's solidified. He's the number one there. He's a rock star. He's a stud. There's no worries about him. The second and third wide receiver position spots, my goodness, I cannot speak. Traquan Smith, Cameron Meredith, Rashard Matthews, Keith Kirkwood, Little Jordan Humphrey, Chad Hansen, Ted Ginn Jr., Simi Cobbs, Austin Carr, Emmanuel Butler. Do you think, or who, out of all those guys mentioned, do you think there's one or two that could be fantasy relevant, and who is really battling for those last two spots in New Orleans?
Well, how could you forget our guy Teddy Ginn?
I mentioned Ted Ginn. I mentioned him right before Simi Cobbs.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess I'm looking at the show sheet.
Yeah, I forgot to put him on there. I was reading off the actual roster here. I was looking at different stuff for them.
My bad.
No,
No, I think Ginn is going to hold on to that number 2 spot because he plays, he has the speed to take the lid off. He's fast, and he's turned himself into a number 2 wide receiver on a team after a relatively inauspicious start to his career. There was a while there where I think it was widely believed that he was going to flame out and be the next Cordero Patterson, or the first Cordero Patterson, I guess. It'd be interesting to see if Patterson kind of follows and learns anything from Ted Ginn, because Ginn was on his way to being just a return man, and that was it. And he's turned himself into a really good wide receiver that plays a very specific role. After that, I don't think Meredith makes the team. He's still having some medical issues. He's not fully recovered. I like Simi Cobbs and Emmanuel Butler. They're young guys. Traquan has to get consistent. He hasn't showed that. Keith Kirkwood is pushing, but I don't think he's been consistent either. So it's really going to come down to who's going to take the slot role. Are they going to just move Michael Thomas into the slot and let him play that big slot? Is Austin Carr going to step into it and take that role? Simi Cobbs is another big receiver. Emmanuel Butler's a big receiver. Keith Kirkwood is a big receiver. I think Austin Carr is really the only one that kind of fits that. Oh, he's 6'1" too, looking at him. So, they don't have they don't have those little quick guys really. Where'd my depth chart go now? So it's really going to depend on training camp. It's one of those. This is definitely a team that if you're playing in a deep league, they've got a handful of dart throws. It's going to be Michael Thomas. It's going to be Ted Ginn. It's going to be Alvin Kamara. The number 4 option is going to come down to Latavius Murray and Jared Cook, really. Mm-hmm. So, it's a top-heavy team when it comes to fantasy production.
Yeah, for fantasy, I would avoid pretty much everybody here outside of Ted Ginn in best ball. I would even be hesitant to get him in any kind of dynasty or redraft situation. Maybe a decent plug-and-play hope that the week you plug him in, he's going to go off for you. There's even no guarantee there. I would think outside of Michael Thomas, I would avoid all these guys. We've seen good seasons out of Rashard Matthews. We've seen a good season out of Cameron Meredith. We just don't know what either one of them is going to be in New Orleans. Obviously, a lot of people, again, are enticed by Traquan Smith and his ability. We saw, again, only out of a couple games from him, though, last year. He was not at all consistent. So I'm right there with you. I think this is one of those battles that you just really are going to have to watch. If I had to pick a guy, I think it would be Traquan Smith. They did draft him. He does have some speed. Again, he is big. I shouldn't say big, but he's 6'2". I think he was 210. So he's a decent-sized wide receiver, but he could be a good slot player. He would be the guy I would guess is going to end up winning that spot. But right now, I'm right there with you. I think it's Thomas and Ginn, and then everything else is just up for grabs here in this offense. Tight end, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it really quick. Again, I don't think there's much of a battle here. Jared Cook, again, got brought over in the offseason. They have, Dan Arnold, Garrett Griffin, Josh Hill, and then a guy I really like, and Elise Mack out of Notre Dame, but he is not someone who's going to produce at all this year. Definitely a guy I would grab and roster in dynasty leagues. I think he's got a lot of skill and a lot of upside. But I just wanted to get your thoughts really quick on Jared Cook. We saw him kind of blow up and onto the scene last year in Oakland, had a really good year, mostly because he was kind of the only worthy receiving target once Amari Cooper went down with the injury. Your thoughts on him possibly being able to repeat as a top 5 tight end in New Orleans, now that, again, he is with Drew Brees, and everybody, I think, is wanting to make the comparison of when Jimmy Graham was there and how good he was being paired there with Brees. Do you think Cook has that kind of upside?
Well, I think he showed last year and in years before that he does have that upside, but he's also showed that he can be wildly inconsistent, too. Last year he had 3 games, 4 games over 9 targets, and let's see, 4 games with 4 targets or under. So that half of his games were boom and half of them were bust. The rest of them were pretty much in the middle. Can he produce regularly? We had Bob Lung on, and I don't have Jared Cook's consistency score in front of me, but I'm pretty sure we talked a little bit about Cook, and he did not score high in the consistency ratings.
No, yeah,
he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy there, though. So, that for whatever that means, I think he's going to be the starter. I think Hill will be the second tight end. Hill had his chance to take the role and run with it. He didn't, so now they've brought in Cook. And at this stage of the game, I mean, Cook is, what is he, 8, 9, 10 years in?
Yes.
He's a journeyman now. He's 10 years into his career. Last year was his high in targets at 101. Relatively consistent catch rate, low 60s. So he's going to have some games. You just, much like Ted Ginn, he play him in best ball. But if he can have a couple good games to start the year and you can move him, by all means do.
All right, so I have Jared Cook's consistency profile pulled up here. So he is right now, according to Mr. Bob Lung, actually tied in 5. So that worked perfectly in there with the question.
Dang it!
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised when I just pulled that up there. And has him as a kind of the tier in the tier B of tight ends. He is right there at the top of it. So he's tier 1 tight end, but he's got a ranking of a B here in his consistency guide. So he actually, from everything I'm looking at here, thinks he's going to be pretty good this year. He's actually been very consistent the past 2 years, according to this guy. 2016, not so much, but was top 12 in 2017 and 2018, and has some pretty good numbers here on his consistency guide. So, I guess that's a fair. So, let me just really quick, over or under on 5. I feel the easy answer there is under. But do you think he's going to go over under 5 there at for tight end next year?
I feel it's you've got the big 3, and then most people are on Ingram and Howard. I'm not sure I'm sold on them, but the position is such a train wreck. Anything could happen. If I had to, if I'm, gun to my head, I'm going to say he's going to be worse than tight end 5. I don't know. Maybe I'm too much gut instinct, I guess, but he just doesn't feel like he's that consistent. So I'm going to say he's going to be worse than tight end 5.
No, I'm right there with you. I don't think he will either.
Write that down and get hit me up after the season.
No, I really don't either. I think, again, a lot of that hype is coming from the fact that he is in New Orleans and being paired with Drew Brees, and they're all buying into the Jimmy Graham, kind of hype there. But I would also say Jimmy Graham was just a better overall tight end prospect than Jared Cook is. And being there in New Orleans in his prime was good. Not that Jared Cook isn't in his prime, but I would take the under as well on Cook. All right, the Atlanta Falcons, they finished second in the division last year here and really have no battles. They actually have a very good team if you go and look at it, and a very surprising team. I know this is actually one of the teams we both had. I can't remember if we both put them in or not, but I know we're at least on the verge of making the playoffs for both of us in 2019 because they really just are well built on offense and defense. So quarterback, we know it's Matt Ryan. He's going to be has been a stud the past couple years. I think he's going to continue to be a top 12 quarterback this year. Wide receiver, same thing. Obviously, Julio, just a complete stud. He's I guess really in the argument as one of the top wide receivers to be drafted, top 3 or 4. You have Calvin Ridley, who a lot of people believe in. I'm still not sold on him, but he has had a couple good games last year that really kind of boosted his fantasy value. Given another year in this offense, likely will take a step forward. And then I would think, I'm going to see if you agree with me here, Mohamed Sanu is probably the third best option here in Atlanta over Justin Hardy and Marcus Green.
Yeah, I'm definitely Sanu. Sanu gets on the field because he does all the dirty work. So, and you can't catch the ball from the sideline. So he's definitely going to be the number 3, and potentially, he can if Ridley, doesn't step up, take another step this year. The opportunity for Sanu to hold on to his position as the number 2 wide receiver could still be there. It's going to depend on Ridley taking that step. I do think Ridley takes that step, and Sanu is the number 3 receiver. Then it comes down to with targets. You've got Sanu, you've got Hooper, you've got Devonta Freeman, and whoever the other running back is going to be. I could see Hooper and Freeman Hooper and Sanu battling it out for third on the totem pole for targets. Mm-hmm. But Hooper had 88 targets last year. Sanu had 94. Ridley had 92, so, they threw the ball 604 times last year.
Jeez. Man, that's a lot.
Julio had 170 targets.
Yeah, he's always been targeted very heavily in that offense. That's the crazy thing about it. Julio's stats are just so good, and if he could only score more touchdowns, he would be the unquestioned one at wide receiver, I think, for everybody. DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams would get a look, but there would be no shot whatsoever, in my opinion. But Julio just doesn't score the touchdowns. I think that's the biggest knock against him. I think he had 8 last year, and I'm trying to remember when it was.
But he went 9 games before he scored it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, I want to say, was it 2016, 2015? I know he had double-digit touchdowns not that long ago, and I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was 2015 or 16. Just thinking off the top of my head, but he had double-digit touchdowns not too long ago, if I remember correctly. But
2012 was his only double-digit touchdown year.
Even worse. I was thinking it was much recent. So yeah, that's the problem. He just doesn't get the touchdowns, and that's what you need. Where all these other guys are getting, 9, 10, 11, 12 touchdowns or more a year, and Julio's just not getting them, and that's what ends up hurting him in the fantasy game. You mentioned Austin Hooper. No real battle there with him either. He's the tight end there, battling with Logan Paulson, Eric Saubert, and Luke Stocker is not really a battle. It's going to be Hooper. A lot of people think he is going to take a step forward this year as well. I'm not necessarily on that train. I do think he has a chance to be a top 10 to 12 tight end, but I'm not seeing him as one of the best. The real battle here, and really the only battle here in Atlanta, is that second running back spot. So we saw Tevin Coleman moved on in the offseason. Ito Smith was there last year and performed admirably and decent when he was paired with Tevin Coleman. We know Devontae Freeman is coming back from injury and is going to be the guy, but does have an injury history, which leads again to Ito Smith, Quadri Allison, Ricky Ortiz, Brian Hill, and Kenyon Barner. They are all going to be the guys battling out for what I would say is probably the receiving role and backup role in that backfield. How do you see that coming down as likely for most between Ito Smith and your guy, Quadri Allison?
Well, I want Allison to win it, but it's going to come down to him getting the opportunity. You know, Ito's been there. He knows the system better. He's going to get every opportunity to take that role. So Allison will have to outplay him. So I think Allison, at the beginning of the year, Allison is going to be battling with Brian Hill for that third running back spot. So he's going to have to make a workmanlike climb up the depth chart and put himself in a position to either surpass Ito Smith or be ready if Devontae Freeman gets injured. You know, I almost could see if Allison shows that he's solid in the run game, I could see them maybe flipping Freeman over into that receiving back role a little bit more and giving some of the carries to Allison. You know, I think Allison is definitely out of Smith and Hill and Allison. I like Allison as the runner better, and he, admittedly, I'm team big guy, and Allison he's a bigger back, so he's got good vision, decent speed, and if he can take some of that pressure off Freeman, help keep Freeman healthy, Freeman gets more receptions and not quite as many carries. That could definitely be something that helps him extend his career. I feel my gut tells me they're going to start the season with Freeman in his regular role, and Ito Smith is the primary backup / 1B guy, and they'll see how it shakes out and see if Allison or Hill can push him.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think it's going to shake out. Again, Ito Smith, before the injury, proved to be a serviceable backup for them. And he did play well compared with Tevin Coleman. Actually, at times outplayed Tevin Coleman, which is why a lot of people thought Coleman would be on the move this year. I do think that he's going to get the first shot and likely will be the backup most of the year. I do like Allison a lot as well. You've talked about him many times on this podcast on how good he was in college. And I do think he's going to get a shot and eventually take over that role, but I think Ito Smith is going to get it most of the year, if not all of this year, and then possibly Allison take a big step up next year. But then again, we have seen running backs as the easiest position to kind of step onto the field and make a difference, and I think we would both say that Allison is more talented than Ito Smith, and so if that's the case, he's likely going to at some point take the job away from Ito Smith. But if you were doing a redraft right now and you were trying to back up Devontae Freeman, I would take Ito Smith first, and then if you see Allison starting to make his move, drop Smith and grab Allison then. But for me, I'm right there with you. It's Smith right now, and Allison is in the wings waiting.
You know, we got a great event coming up here in August. On the 18th, the Fantasy Football Roundtable is going to be at the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo at the Canton Cultural Center in Canton, Ohio. This is a really cool, this is the inaugural event put together by Bob Lung, writer of the award-winning Consistency Guide that we frequently cite to prove me wrong. It's going to be a cool event. It starts at noon, going on for about 6 hours. There's going to be a bunch of great fantasy football people there. It's sponsored by the Full Time Fantasy Podcast Network, which we're a part of. home of the Fantasy Football World Championships. Dynasty Nerds will be there, representatives from the Fantasy Footballers, RotoViz, and a whole host of other people. The Back Row Fantasy Show, Fighting Chance Fantasy, all going to be represented there at the expo. There's going to be some really cool things, not just vendor booths and us trying to get you to subscribe to our podcast and give away free shit, but there's going to be a live mock draft going on with the experts. Different panels going to happen. I know I'm going to take part in a Dynasty League strategy panel. There's going to be I think a DFS panel, redraft, a bunch of different things going on that you'll be able to just grab a ton of information there and really help you prepare for your fantasy football season. And if you're not doing anything, you can also swing by the Hall of Fame. There's nothing quite like the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And more importantly, because I know you were mentioning all the panels and everything that people can get information for, you can also just go up and talk to Dennis. I unfortunately won't be there, but you can still go up and you can mingle with Dennis. You can ask him questions about your fantasy team, and you can get live advice, not just from him, but everybody there. You can talk to all the people. That's the reason Bob set all this stuff up, is for you guys to kind of meet us in person, and we can talk about fantasy football or just hang out and have a good time. It's going to be a blast. All the podcasts and everything that you guys have set up there is a great group. It's going to be an all-star lineup. So if any of you guys are going to be in Ohio or you live near the Ohio area, near Canton, it is definitely going to be worth it. It's just the tickets are $20, and actually, what is our promo code that you can use?
Oh yeah, if you register and use promo code KNIGHTS, KNIGHTS, you'll get $5 off your registration.
Yeah,
you can come spin the wheel of knowledge.
Yeah, there you go. And then again, so now you're getting for $15. You're getting to come in there and then talk to all these experts and everything. Like I said, it's going to be all kinds of swag and everything there for you guys. It'll be well worth it. Matter of fact, I know Bob has talked about how everything he's putting together, everybody who shows up and does that's going to get like a swag bag that's like got $100 worth of stuff in the bag alone. So you just getting there early, and even if you, like Dennis said, use the code KNIGHTS, $15, and you're going to get $100 worth of swag bag and everything. It's going to be well worth your time. We promise you that. The Carolina Panthers, they had an interesting season last year. I believe they started out, was it 7-2 or 3? They were on a roll, and I believe lost like the last 7 games straight. Like it was bad. They just went completely downhill. A lot of that,
Cam couldn't throw the ball anymore.
Yeah, that's what a lot of it had to do, I would assume, with Cam's shoulder and how bad it really got. We don't know for sure how healthy he's going to be in 2019. There's been a lot of talk that Cam is fine. He's already throwing the ball. Everything looks good, but I would imagine we're really not going to know unless we see any kind of preseason games out of him, which we don't know if that'll even happen because they may just try to rest him. But there's no battle there.
They lost 7 of their last 8 games.
Yeah, I knew it was a lot. As my brother is a huge Panthers fan, I remember talking to him about the fact that they were like in prime position to be. They were battling with the Saints, which is crazy to say right now, for that division right up until that started going down, and then they just it went bad. But there is no battle really with Cam Newton. He is the quarterback, at least for now. We have both talked a lot about Will Grier. I know you have been one of the people who've talked about there's actually but a chance for the Panthers to get out of Cam Newton's contract, and Will Grier possibly being the future quarterback there. I just kind of want to get your thoughts altogether on Will Grier. I know I've talked about him a lot, that I like him. He was right up there as one of my top prospects in the class. I believe I had him 3rd or 4th in this class. I like Will Grier. I do think he needs some seasoning. I don't think he's necessarily pro-ready right now. But overall, I think he is a very good quarterback. Your thoughts on Will Grier?
Yeah, I think you had him right behind Tyree Jackson.
Yeah. Well, hey, Tyree Jackson's still not unproven. Hey, we might see what happens. Where'd he go? Buffalo, right? He's probably not going to beat out Josh Allen, but we'll see. Don't count out Tyree Jackson just yet.
Now, I think Grier landed in a great spot. He's fairly mobile, not anywhere near as mobile as Cam Newton. He's got a good arm. Threw for almost threw for just over 8,500 yards in 3 years in college, 2.5 years actually. So he's a really good passer. He's in a great situation to sit behind Cam, learn the NFL game, and just get ready. I feel like he'll be able, if they move on from Cam coming up when his contract expires, they can. I don't think Tyler Haneke is going to beat out Will Grier. And so to get Grier ready, so let's see, I'm looking here. So after 2019, there's only $2 million in dead cap for Cam Newton's contract. Mm-hmm. So they could move on. I'm not sure when his 2020 contract guarantees or tolls. He's on the hook. They're on the hook for $21.1 million if they let him, if they don't cut him after the 19 season. So if Grier shows out, does pretty well, he could be a great sleeper to step up. It's tough to move on from somebody like Cam Newton, but if his shoulder ends up maybe not recovering quite like they expected, he's 30 years old now. His type of play, being a big physical guy that runs the ball and takes a lot of hits, that can kind of wear a guy down, maybe make him a little bit less effective. So that there is potentially a scenario where you could see the Panthers moving on from Cam Newton after the 2019 season. I'm not ready to say if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet. I'm just saying there's a scenario where you could see it make sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think it'd be a great idea, but I cannot imagine I don't even know. I would imagine Carolina fans would likely be pissed off. I could be wrong. I know my brother, I shouldn't say loves Cam Newton, but likes Cam Newton, thinks he's a good quarterback, but just the amount of interest I think that would surround Cam Newton if he became a free agent would be a big deal. I mean, that could really, in all honesty, change the prospects of the 2019 draft as well, 2020 draft, because everybody's talking about all these quarterbacks coming out in Tua and Herbert. Who am I forgetting in that top three? Goodness, everybody's talking about those three and them coming out next year because they'll all be able to. So the chances are they're going to. Herbert's the only one who has to because he's a senior. But if you got those three coming out, and then you had Cam Newton in free agency, I mean, that would change everything, I think. Because then would the Dolphins for sure go all in on a rookie quarterback, or would they try and pay Cam Newton? You've got, I'm sure, other teams we could go through the list, and I can't think of off the top of my head, but a lot of other quarterbacks. I mean, dude, I'm throwing this out there because now you got me down the rabbit hole really quick. Could you imagine if the Panthers decide to say, you know what, thank you, Cam, for everything you've done. You've been beaten up the past couple years. You've got us to one Super Bowl. We couldn't pull it off. We're just going to go ahead and let you go. We're going to go forward with Will Grier. And then the New England Patriots sign Cam Newton. Thoughts?
It would be a completely different offense that they would be running. So, excuse me, while Belichick is definitely creative enough to be able to do something like that, it's a situation that I would be surprised if that's it. I could see, if Breeze retires, going to New Orleans. Daniel Jones isn't ready, so he goes to New York because Eli is clearly done. Jimmy G doesn't pan out like they thought he would, or Ben finally decides to hang him up.
Yeah, I mean,
Washington, decides that, hey, Dwayne Haskins, it doesn't look like he's pan. Tennessee, Mariota and Tannehill.
I was looking at, yeah. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because there's a chance this obviously won't happen, but yeah, it's interesting to me to think really quick. Like, dude, there's so many teams that could use a quarterback, and if Cam Newton, I mean,
Baltimore.
Yeah, he'd be the premier free agent. There'd be no doubt about that. But, I'm right there with you. I don't think they make any kind of hesitant move there. Maybe, again, his contract is up after the 2020 season, I believe, is what it was.
Yep.
So, I mean,
let me double check that. No, I think
he's a free agent in 2020?
He's got 2 years left on it, 19 and 20.
So, I mean, they could just let his contract ride out and then let Will Grier take over. Either way, it's interesting to see. Will Grier is definitely a guy. I'm in a Dynasty startup right now, and I actually just grabbed him. It's a Devi Dynasty League, and I just grabbed him in the 23rd round. And, I mean, to me, that's great value for him because if he does end up becoming the starter in Carolina, I just got his starting quarterback in the 23rd round. Ryan Finley actually went right before him, who I was hoping to grab. But, right now he's going extremely late in most Dynasty startup leagues. Even in Superflex leagues, he's a guy that you can target late and get as an upside guy who might be able to take over a starting spot in the next couple years. Running back position, we know it's all Christian McCaffrey all day long, but he cannot be on the field for all 100% of the snaps. So you've got Elijah Holyfield, my guy, the workout warrior, or non-warrior, depending on how you want to look at it, and of course Jordan Scarlett, who they also drafted higher than Elijah Holyfield. Wait, Holyfield actually didn't even get drafted. Apologize about that. But Jordan Scarlett did. So your thoughts on those two? Do you think either one of them is going to get any kind of run behind McCaffrey, or is it just kind of a spell him and backup role for both of those guys?
Well, they're going to need to move on from Cameron Artis-Payne before one of them gets the opportunity, I think. So, but between Scarlett, Holyfield, and Payne, I think one of them is going to start to get a few more carries. They're going to, with Cam coming off the shoulder injury, they're going to try to keep him from running as much. McCaffrey, while had very productive last year and really kind of carried the load. What was it? What did he run for? How many carries? Whoops, it's defense. He still only had 219 carries. Cam had 100 carries. So if they're going to keep that, if they're going to cut Cam back and keep McCaffrey around that same number, you're looking at potentially 75 to 100 carries for somebody else. They divided it up between a bunch of people last year. Who was it? Travaris Cadet, DJ Moore, CJ Anderson. So there were a bunch of, Curtis Samuel had a few carries, Alex Arma. So there are a bunch of people that all had between 10 and 20 carries, 25 carries. So I think it might be a smart move to try to consolidate some of that. But it's going to be Christian McCaffrey for 225 carries. Cam Newton, I think they're going to want to try to cut back to 60 carries maybe. Preserve that shoulder so he doesn't take those hits. Mm-hmm. If I had to put my money on Cameron Artis-Payne, Elijah Holyfield, or Jordan Scarlett, Scarlett didn't have terrific production in college. Holyfield was, he had some production, but he was in a situation with, honestly, just much better running backs around him. So I think there's a pretty hard cap on him. Cameron Artis-Payne is the same way. I think the only thing, the edge Payne has is that he has been there and he knows the system. So is Payne going to end up again being a weekly inactive? I don't know. I think you just, do you like the name Holyfield or do you like the name Scarlett better? Pick one in your rookie draft and see what happens, because it doesn't get any more lottery ticket than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, too. In all honesty, I wouldn't. invest in any of these guys outside of McCaffrey, and you're going to have a top 3 pick to get McCaffrey anyways. I don't believe in the artist formerly known as Payne. I don't believe in, as much as I love Elijah Holyfield, I need to see something out of him and Jordan Scarlett before I even think about it. Those are guys who are not even getting drafted in the deepest of dynasty leagues. They're likely going to be able to be picked up off the waiver wires if anything were to happen during preseason. So that's what I'd aim to get him at. If you really want to take a shot, again, I believe in Elijah Holyfield. I think he is a decent running back. I think he got a bad rap at the combine. I think in college he was more productive than he's been given credit for, and again, that combine really kind of hurt his stock, but it was a bad performance. There is no doubt about that. He's still running the 40 right now as we speak, so it
yes,
was that bad. It was so I cannot blame anybody if they want to avoid either one of those guys and just wait to see what happens. For the wide receiver position, we know DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are both kind of secured in their roles there. Both, I think, are going to have really good roles and really good seasons here in Carolina. It's that third wide receiver spot that is kind of up for grabs here. So they signed Chris Hogan in the offseason, which is, I guess, kind of their big signing. I don't know if you want to call it a big signing, but that was the guy they kind of brought over. Jarius Wright there. Rashad Ross, Aldrick Robinson, Terry Godwin, Mose Frazier. I believe Torrey Smith is still there, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. I think his contract was up, actually. So any thoughts on... Does a third wide receiver spot even matter in Carolina? And if it does, who do you think is going to get that spot?
So if Carolina throws 0 passes to the tight end the entire season, the third wide receiver is still going to be 4th in the pecking order. So behind McCaffrey, Moore, and Samuel. That being said, I think that, I feel like Torrey Smith ends up not making the team. Maybe, Jarius Wright's listed as their third, but it could be, Hogan, Robinson, Smith, and Wright. It's just a group of veterans that honestly just don't do it. They're not. None of them are going to be fantasy relevant unless you're in a super deep best ball league and you just have to start one of them on a bye week, or you get drunk on a Saturday night and they're playing around and accidentally put one in your starting lineup. I think the bigger question for me is who's going to be the number one? Is it going to be Curtis Samuel or is it going to be DJ Moore? They do some similar things. They both can do really good things after the catch, so they're both great in the short game. So I think that leaves, as I circle my way back around, I think that probably leaves Torrey Smith and Chris Hogan maybe a little more suited to that third wide receiver role. But there's going to be, let's see, Devin Funchess left 79 targets when he hit the road. DJ Moore had 82. Curtis Samuel had 65 and only 8 starts. Moore only started 10 games. So I expect Samuel and Moore both to go across 100 targets. I don't expect either one of them probably to get more than 120. McCaffrey had 124 targets last year. So, again, it's kind of like Atlanta or the Saints where we were talking that it's a very top-heavy unit for fantasy production.
Yeah, I agree with you. If anybody, I'm taking a shot on Chris Hogan. He's proven it. I like Torrey Smith, but coming back, his age, that injury, I don't see it. I would take a late flyer on Chris Hogan. And just to answer your question on the number one, I think it is going to be DJ Moore. He's just slightly bigger than Curtis Samuel. I believe at like 6 foot 210 compared to Samuel's 5'11", 195. I believe are their measurables. I just think Samuel is perfectly suited for the slot there. I think he can be more dangerous. Don't know I don't know who I would pick out of those two to have the better season. I think they're going to be relatively close in fantasy production. I think maybe more just based on him possibly getting a better shot at touchdowns when it comes down to the red zone. I can see them going to him over Curtis Samuel, but I think Curtis Samuel is just a tad bit more explosive yak-wise, but also he struggles with injuries a little bit more than we've seen so far from DJ Moore. But I think both are very well suited for Cam Newton and that offense. I can see, again, as we've both been saying, both of them having a huge year. And then for me, Chris Hogan as a deep sleeper and possible, wide receiver 4 or 5 in fantasy at the third spot for the Carolina Panthers.
Right.
The last one is the tight end's not really a battle. We know I was going to call him Chris Olsen for some reason. Geez, Greg Olsen is coming back. However, he has dealt with just some really bad foot injuries the past couple years, and Ian Thomas is definitely the future. If you have a shot to grab Ian Thomas, grab him. I do think Greg Olsen is going to get the starting job and likely be the starter, but I would not be surprised if Ian Thomas out-snaps and targets him this year. I don't know if I would say Ian Thomas breaks out this year, but I do think after this year he is going to be the clear starter there in Carolina and going to be a top 12. I think he has the ability to be a top 12 tight end in the future, probably, though, not until 2020. Your thoughts on Olsen and Thomas?
Well, Olsen had 38 targets in 9 games with 9 starts, and Thomas had 49 targets in 16 games with 6 starts. I believe the future is now. I think Olsen is a good tight end, but I also think that Thomas he's young, he's eager, he's going to push. He showed last year that when thrust into the situation that the game was not too big for him. And I think having a full off season to refine some of the things that he had challenges with, he's going to be ready to go this year. I agree with you. I think they may give Olsen the ceremonial starts, maybe bring him in 2 tight end sets closer to the goal line, where he can, maybe catch more touchdown passes than Thomas, which isn't good for Thomas if you're a fantasy owner. But I definitely see of the almost 90 targets between the two of them last year, I could see it split 60-30 this year.
All right, the last team here in the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, while having a horrible season last year, actually had a fairly decent offseason in the landing of Bruce Arians, someone that everybody is excited about because he has, since his days in Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and Arizona, produced a lot of fantasy value. No battle here at QB. We do know that Jameis Winston will be the starter. However, this is his last year under contract with the Buccaneers. Do you think he is the solution for the Buccaneers at quarterback?
I think he's the solution as long as Bruce Arians is there. Because Bruce Arians has a little bit of Mike Martz in his demeanor. All right, you threw an interception. Screw it. We got it. Let's put it behind you. Let's go. It's great you tried to make a play. I appreciate it. Let's go on to the next play. We had a turnover. Defense, get out there. Well, their defense isn't going to be great this year. So the offense is definitely going to be throwing the ball. They're going to have to put up some numbers if the team wants to be competitive. It's going to essentially fall on Jameis's shoulders to keep them in games. So, is he the answer? I think he is, from the standpoint of he's got the arm, he's got the understanding, he's got the guts. He knows how to play quarterback in the NFL. But I think if you're going to be looking for one of those, 35 touchdown, 8 interception seasons from Jameis Winston, you're going to just keep driving yourself crazy. That's just not his game. He'll throw 35 touchdowns, 40 touchdowns, but he's going to throw 15, 16, 17, maybe 20 interceptions too, because he's not afraid to take a chance.
Yeah, I'm not as sold on Winston that he's going to be the answer there. It's been reported that he has a great relationship with Bruce Arians. He's known him before, even him coming over here. He's always kind of thought of Bruce Arians as a father figure. I hope it works out. You don't want to see anybody kind of fail. The same thing with Marcus Mariota, who is his kind of running mate there, the 1 and 2 in that draft class. I hope it does work out for him. I actually think he's going to have a really good year in fantasy. We've seen quarterbacks in Bruce Arians' offense just light it up. He's not Big Ben. He's not Kurt Warner. But he is a very good fantasy asset. We've seen it. I would not be surprised if Winston finishes in the top 12 at all. Matter of fact, I think he will finish as a top 12 quarterback this year. But if he does that, then I would imagine he's going to be the answer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I'm not sure or sold on that right now for them. The running back position is also a very interesting question. Now, I already know which way you're going to go, or at least I know the one option that's already eliminated for you. You may not go the way I think, but obviously you have Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones there who have been fighting it out the past 2 seasons, or last season and now this season. And then they brought in Bruce Anderson as a rookie this year. Your thoughts on how that backfield shapes up between those three?
Well, Bruce Arians likes to have his running backs be a little bit bigger and be able to be very versatile. Aside from being dynamic, Peyton Barber kind of fits that mix or that description. Ronald Jones has the dynamics, but he's not a good pass receiver and he doesn't have good vision and he doesn't have good contact balance. Bruce Anderson is, I think, somewhere in the middle of the two of them. I think he's not as dynamic or just as outright fast as Ronald Jones, but I don't think he's quite the. He's reputedly a good pass catcher, but at South Dakota State or North Dakota State, whichever one it was he played at, they didn't throw the ball to him a lot. When they did, and in like Senior Bowl practices and stuff, he looked very natural catching the ball and running routes out of the backfield. So there's been a lot of good press on him. But again, he didn't get drafted, so it wasn't like they were beating a path to his door to get the small school guy. I would be surprised if I think it ends up being like a 60-20-20 split, 60% Barber, 20 Jones, and 20 Anderson until somebody shows that they can take it over. I just think Barber has probably the best mix of skills, and going into last season, he averaged 4 yards a carry over his career. Last year was 3.7. I was disappointed in his season last year. I expected a little bit more from him, but I didn't expect him to have to be like Nick Chubb or anything. But I did expect him to have a little better productivity. My money's on Barber, but if any of the three of them took 70% of the snaps this year, it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, so I was trying to look up his 1 year in Indianapolis because he didn't have a full down back. He was Vic Ballard. Just to kind of prove a point, Vic Ballard, not a guy who I would honestly compare him very well to Peyton Barber. I don't think that's an unfair comparison to make.
No, not at all.
Vic Ballard actually had a pretty good year in Indianapolis. That was the year that Chuck Pagano was dealing with his, I can't remember what it was, but he was dealing with cancer and was out for most of the year. Bruce Arians ran that team, and Vic Ballard had a good year. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think Bruce Anderson is kind of the distant third here, in my opinion. Now, does that mean that he'll stay there? No, but I don't see him coming in and playing a big role right off the bat. I think it's going to, again, and maybe this is just my Ronald Jones love coming out, I think it's going to be more of a 50-50 split than most other people. Peyton Barber, when it comes to the receiving game, is still a fairly dynamic weapon. He can catch the ball, and he's better at it than Ronald Jones. That's not hard to admit or see. You can just watch that very easy with your eyes. Stevie Wonder could see that Peyton Barber is a better receiver, can do more with the ball than my goodness, Ronald Jones. There we go. But Ronald Jones, I think, is the more superior talented running back. He has the ability to make big plays, break big plays. He is in my opinion, dynamic running back. I would not be surprised if he finally gets his shot with Bruce Arians. He, I think, was kind of unfairly used last year. He was the worst running back when it came to getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. And some may say that that's based on him, or it could be the fact that Tampa Bay had a horrible offensive line last year. That team all around was just not good last year. I cannot put all of that on Ronald Jones. Is some of it on Ronald Jones? Absolutely. He is not quite the prospect that I thought he was going to be, but I still think that he is a good running back prospect. I've said many a times I think he still has the ability to be a high-end to middle-tier running back too, if given the ability, and I think this is finally the year that happens. The only bad thing about that is he is being drafted ahead of Peyton Barber, and quite by a lot. I can't remember exactly what it was when we were talking about it a couple episodes ago. I believe it was with Chris Foster, but he was being drafted easily 5 to 6 rounds ahead of Peyton Barber. At that cost, I would take Peyton Barber in a redraft league. In a dynasty league, though, I'd take Ronald Jones because I think he has the staying power. Let's see here. Wide receiver. So, we know Mike Evans, top 10, 12, 8, 5, whatever you want to put him at wide receiver. He's not going anywhere. Everybody's on the Chris Godwin train. They all think he's going to break out this year. My mom, who knows nothing about fantasy football, knows that Chris Godwin is going to break out this year. That's a running joke in the fantasy football community because everybody thinks he's going to break out.
Told me.
Oh, is she? Well, see, there you go. So now you know, too. Chris Godwin is going to break out this year. So, the third wide receiver position spot is very interesting to me because I actually think all 4 of these guys, or really 3 of them, have a shot to do something. And in an offense that's likely going to throw the ball a lot with Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston, any one of these guys could be a viable wide receiver 3 to 4 in fantasy. Justin Watson, who they drafted last year, Rashad Perryman, who they brought over in free agency, and then Anthony Johnson and DeMarcus Lodge, both free agent rookie pickups this year. Your thoughts on how that third wide receiver role might shake out for the Bucs?
Well, I think that Rashad Perryman in 3 wide receiver sets, you're going to have Evans and Perryman on the outside with Godwin in the slot. In 2 wide receiver sets, I think it's going to come down to what package they're running as to whether it's going to be Perriman or Godwin out on the field. I would give the edge to Godwin probably, but Perriman is going to definitely, in my opinion, I think he's going to be the number 3 guy. Another guy to watch out for in the slot is Justin Watson. Out of Penn State. He's going into his second year, bigger guy. Not super fast, but a good pass catcher. Him and DeMarcus Lodge, I think, are pretty similar in their skill sets. Anthony Johnson and Lodge, Watson, and Johnson are all going to be wrestling for that 4 or 5 slot. Wouldn't surprise me if Johnson ends up on the practice squad. I think Scott Miller, who was another draft pick there in Tampa, is going to make the team because of his special teams play. So then it comes down to how many wide receivers are you going to have active? We already know they're going to have both tight ends, Brayton Howard. They're going to have probably at least 3 running backs, maybe 4 if they still have Ellington there. From that third wide receiver spot is, in my opinion, it is Rashad Perriman's to lose. And if Perriman continues to progress like he has the past couple years, he could be somebody that is in for a, sixth-year Brandon Lloyd-style breakout.
Well, Perriman did not have a bad year last year with Baker Mayfield once he kind of got on the field and they got a connection started going. He actually looked pretty good. I'm with you. I think Perriman is going to get that spot. I like Watson and Johnson a lot, but I'd be hesitant to say either one of them does anything this year. Johnson is a guy I was big on. I know you were a fan of him as well coming out of Buffalo. Rookie, obviously didn't get drafted, so that is going to hurt him a little bit. But he's a guy I would not be surprised in showing something at the end of this year or possibly even next year. He's a guy I think is worth stashing. Watson got a lot of love last year, and when he got drafted to Tampa Bay, a lot of people thought he had a chance to break out. I know we did a trade earlier this offseason that sent Watson to you, so I would imagine you have a little bit of faith in him as well. I liked him. That's why I took him last year in the rookie draft we were in. But I think it's Perriman's job to lose. Then if I had to rank them, it would be in the order that I read them in: Watson, Johnson, Lodge being the last guy. But Johnson, for me, is a guy I would stash very late if you can. Even if you got a taxi squad, throw him on there because I do think he has a chance to bust out here within the next couple years.
Yeah, and he's another one of those big backs. It's we're going to come down, I think, or big wide receivers, 6'2", 209. We're going to see here, I often reference Guy Benjamin and James Lofton and Willie Totten and Jerry Rice. I think Anthony Johnson is going to show us that the Buffalo offense was him, not Tyree Jackson. So
I don't disagree with that. In my write-up on Anthony Johnson, that's what I said. And that's why, in all honesty, I think he's a great fit there for Tampa Bay because Jameis Winston, while not an inaccurate thrower like Tyree Jackson, at times can have balls sail on him, and Anthony Johnson can go up and make that catch much like Mike Evans does, which is why I would not be surprised if Anthony Johnson doesn't carve out a role for himself in this offense sooner rather than later. But I'm with you. It is Brashad Perriman's role right now. You mentioned the tight ends. Everybody is on O.J. Howard. They all think this is finally his year to break out. He was looking good last year before the injury, yet Cameron Brate has always been Jameis Winston's guy. He's always produced and looked like a really good tight end when Jameis Winston was on the field. So is Brate going to get pushed aside finally here in 2019 and let O.J. Howard, I shouldn't say let, but is this going to be the year that he is pushed aside and O.J. Howard steals the show and becomes the tight end one in Tampa Bay?
Well, O.J. Howard has to show he can stay healthy for the whole season. He's going into his third year, and he's missed time both years. Brate missed time last year as well. Looking here, it looks like he missed the whole. No, let's see. No, he didn't miss. He played all 16. O.J. Howard is, it's like Ebron and Doyle. Mm-hmm. O.J. Howard is Eric Ebron. He's a physical specimen. He's athletic. He's faster. Brate's a good tight end. He's like Doyle. He's going to line up on the end of the line, and if you need 10, he's going to get you 11. And if you need a touchdown and from inside the 20, he's one of Winston's favorite targets down there. So it's a situation where the two of them, for fantasy purposes, it could really be tough to be an investor in the Tampa Bay tight end because Howard has that athleticism that you look for in a top-tier tight end, but for him to get the opportunity share, he has to hold off Cameron Brate, and they like Brate. I was looking at an article about another team, and they were talking about the new regime. Well, it turns out that when I looked a little deeper into it, the new regime was a GM that had been there for like 5 years. It was just a new head coach. Uh-huh. And so the GM that drafted Cameron Brate to Tampa is still in Tampa.
Yeah.
they've got a new coach. That GM also drafted O.J. Howard, but he also just extended Cameron Brate with a pretty nice contract. So, if I'm drafting him, I'm gonna draft Howard. Howard is going to be the one I draft first, but Brate's probably more likely to be on my team because I'm probably not going to draft Howard at his ADP.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to look at it. I mean, Howard, I think, is going to be given the opportunity. I actually think Cameron Brate has a chance to be traded, as crazy as that may seem. I think his contract now is a little bit more team-friendly than it was last year. A very good tight end. If a team is looking for a tight end, I would not be surprised if they move on from him and give Howard the role. But I think Howard is going to be given every shot to earn it and be the guy, and I would not be surprised if he does it and does kind of relegate Cameron Brate to the bench. But I'm right there with you. I probably won't own Howard anywhere because he's just going way too high. He's being drafted as a top 4 or 5 tight end, and I'm not going to draft him that high. I really do. I'm right there with you. I need to see it before I'm going to draft him that high. I just think he's got too much bust potential.
Yeah, O.J. Howard is going as tight end 4.
Oh, even worse.
Currently on Fantasy Pros. So where's Brate? Brate might not even be going. Let me see here. Oh, there he is. Tight end 37.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you really want him for the upside, you can take him there, but I would probably just avoid both.
Yeah, I mean, at tight end 37, or where I'm drafting there, I'm probably going to take someone like Jordan Thomas in Houston.
Yeah.
Maybe Josh Oliver in Jacksonville, C.J. Uzoma even Ricky Seals-Jones is there as well, and he could potentially be listed as a tight end, but playing a wide receiver spot there in Arizona.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our NFC South camp battle. So we now it's time to do the Knights of the Round Table draft order.
In 2019, 10 random people came together to form the Knights of the Fantasy Football Roundtable. They challenged the host of this program in deep fantasy battle. In hopes of dethroning one of these hosts and proving that they themselves are the best in all of fantasy football. The fight will rage on through the entire 2019 season. Will one of these 10 owners be able to dethrone the host, or will the host end up ruling the day once again?
I know these guys have been waiting for this for a long time, so we're finally going to do it. So I've got all 12 names put in here in a randomizer right now. I have yet to hit the button so that we can do this all together. So just to go in order of the people of when they were put in the league: Jonathan, Ricky, Ty, Ben, Blake, Cody, Jack. I can't remember what his first name is, so you're in here as D. Brown. I apologize about that. Jerry,
Derek, I believe.
Derek, gotcha. Derek, Jerry, 509er, and then Dennis and me as the last two. So here we go. Generating draft order now, and interesting. All right, so we have the order. I will screenshot it now, and it will be posted in the chat, but I will read off. This was done by, what site is this here? The draft order generator. So the number one pick goes to Blake. So congratulations. I believe in the chat he was talking about the other day wanting a top 3 pick. You got it, buddy. Number 2 goes to you, Dennis, so congratulations on that.
Damn it, Matt. I told you I wanted 11.
Well, I apologize. I'm not thrilled with my pick either. If that makes you feel any better. 509er, you've got the third pick. Cody, you are pick 4. Derek, you got pick 5. Ty got pick 6. I got pick 7. I was hoping for something further back or further up. I hate being in the middle of the draft, so that is not going to be fun. Ben, you got pick 8. Ricky, you are pick 9. Jack at pick 10. Jerry at pick 11. And Jonathan got pick 12, which I think is a great landing spot and a great spot for him. So that is the draft order, guys. I will, again, have it posted in the chat as well here. Probably sometime tomorrow. I will let this episode go live, give everybody obviously a chance to listen to it, and then we'll post this in there, and then we'll start getting everything in order. Again, I can't wait for this draft. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially if it goes anything like the mock. It's going to be very good. Dennis, you had one thing you wanted to talk about here as well with the Scott Fishbowl stuff here before we cut out of here, so the mic is yours.
Yep. So, the Scott Fishbowl, if you're on Twitter at all, you're probably tired of hearing about it because everybody, all 1,200 members of the Scott Fishbowl, seem to be posting about it about every other minute. But the draft began yesterday. Leading into that, starting at noon this past Sunday, Sal Lido, Kevin Cotillo, and Stephen Marcus from the Fantasy Football Funhouse hosted the second annual Scott Fishbowl Potathon. They raised over $6,000 that gets donated directly to Fantasy Cares. Last year, Fantasy Cares raised over $44,000 for Toys for Tots that they used to really brighten the holiday season for a lot of kids across the country. If you have not or didn't get a chance to catch the Potathon, it was broadcast on YouTube. You can go to the SFB Potathon, just YouTube, search it, it'll show up. Also, if you go to clipcast.app, they recorded it all, and you can actually search through it and find clips about people. Clipcast you can type in a player name or a podcast name or a particular host, Matthew Berry or, Matthew Bruning or Jeremy Barker, and it'll bring you the clips about these people or these people are talking. It's a pretty cool app. But if you weren't able to catch it, you can, sit at your desk, throw it on like a podcast, play it back, and just listen. They went for 25 hours and closed it out with Hitman Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers. You can go to fantasycares.net and donate directly to Fantasy Cares. But get out there and make a difference. Fantasy football is about fun, and there's nothing more fun than helping kids have a great Christmas.
I agree, and I mean, even if it's something you can't do now, I strongly encourage something I do in a lot of my leagues. If you win it, donate some of your winnings to charity, or even put that in your league rules that whatever your buy-in is, some of that goes to a charity of the winner's choice every year. So the winner, it can be a different charity every year. But I strongly advise that. I know we've seen a lot of that lately, and it's really cool to see. People posting on Twitter right after their championships are finished, thanking the player that helped them get there, and then them donating some of their winnings to that player's charity. That's a great way to go about handling your winnings because, again, this game is for fun. Really, we are not doing anything when it comes to the fantasy football stuff. I mean, yeah, you have to plug in your lineups and all this stuff and guess right at times, but it's the players and everything. They're doing that, and you're winning some money out of it. It's always nice to give back and help people out. And what everything Scott does and the Scott Fishbowl Potathon with Sal and all them that did is amazing, and giving to that. And, again, I'm going to imagine everybody that's listening to this are adults or people of age that can do it and make a difference do it because those toys means so much to those kids, and to be able to give kids that don't have the ability to have a Christmas is an amazing feeling. Whether you're there or not to see it, it's an amazing thing for them. So I agree with everything Dennis said, and if you guys have, even if it's only a couple bucks, if everybody puts in a couple bucks, it adds up and it matters. So I strongly encourage everybody to do that, and we appreciate anybody who does. So Dennis, thank you obviously so much for joining me today to talk about the NFC Camp Battles. We'll be back with an episode later this week to do, I think, the NFC East or West. I'm not 100% sure which one, but one of those two we will do. Before we cut out of here, anything new going on with the Nerd Herd, and obviously where can we find you on Twitter?
Well, I am at culture_coach on Twitter. The Nerd Herd's going to be rolling out a new mock draft application for the Nerd Herd members. So if you're not in, get in. $2.99 a month is a sweet deal, cheaper than a cup of coffee. Got some great new items coming out with one of our writers, Ray Garvin. He's been putting out his Nerd Notes Devi product, which is he's doing a film breakdown of different Devi players. Jerry Judy was his last one. It's a pretty cool thing. We're just working on putting out a couple articles a day, tightening up everything, and just staying productive, trying to get through this dead season. Got a couple more 32 and 32 articles before we finish up with that. Really looking forward to getting through the Scott Fish Bowl draft, and then we've got the Midwest Expo, and then the Fantasy Football World Championships, and damn, then we're in season. Holy cow!
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun for sure. So Dennis, thank you so much again for joining me, and looking forward to talking to you about some more camp battles in a couple days.
Right on.
Prepare for glory! I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's in the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
The Home Depot's making it easy to turn your favorite moment into the perfect color for any room with the Project Color app. Upload any image, then discover the colors and paint to match. Now you're a swipe and a click closer to everything you need for your next project. Explore the most popular colors and trending palettes to find your perfect paint. Get a colorful new experience with the Project Color app, then shop our best brands with gallons starting from just $25.97 at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only. See store for details. The Home Depot's making it easy to turn your favorite moment into the perfect color for any room with the Project Color app. Upload any image, then discover the colors and paint to match. Now you're a swipe and a click closer to everything you need for your next project. Explore the most popular colors and trending palettes to find your perfect paint. Get a colorful new experience with the Project Color app, then shop our best brands with gallons starting from just $25.97 at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only. See store for details.